Hello and welcome to Football League World TV and the West Brom Takeover Show. My name's Ned Holmes. I'm a writer on Football League World TV, and I'm joined by Matt from the WBA Report podcast to talk all things baggies. How are you doing today, Matt?
Yeah, not bad, thank you, mate. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Well, it's our pleasure having you. Before we get started, just a reminder to everyone to subscribe to the Football League World TV YouTube channel if you haven't already, and to get involved with your comments, your questions, your thoughts while we're live on the show, because me and Matt would love to answer them, really. Well, we'll start, Matt. We'll get your thoughts sort of on the season as a general in a minute, but we'll start with a sort of Friday night at the Bet365 Stadium. Nick Powell's goal in the second half meant the Potters ended West Brom's unbeaten start with a 1-0 win. What did you make of the game?
Yeah, I mean, before looking at the game from an Albion perspective, I think it's important to emphasise how well Stoke and Michael O'Neill did, really, because they matched Albion's intensity, quality, and outplayed us. They were deserved winners. I think the expected goal stat of 2.93 of Stokes compared to Albion's 0.73 is just indicative of Stoke's dominance, and they really did deserve that win. It was a matter of time, wasn't it? I think before they got that winning goal, of course, a number of chances, a ruled out goal, and then of course Johnston makes that penalty save too. So yeah, again, of course, you got to hold your hands up when the opposition outplays you. Well done, Stoke. But it was disappointing. I said from an Albion point of view, we just lacked quality and looked tired. It was just a really poor 90 minutes, I think.
Absolutely. Is it a concern for you, or do you think it's just a case of that's the ebb and flow of the Championship? You come up against top teams. And as you say, it's an intense style of play that Valérien and Ismaël have got you guys playing. So do you think it just highlighted that the international breaks come at the perfect time?
Yeah, I think I'd definitely say that's the case. Of course, the intensity, the demand that Ismaël puts on his players is probably the greatest of any manager in the league. And I think one of the issues on Friday night was that we looked so tired and lacked that real energy that has made us such a force in the Championship this season. And if we haven't got those legs, and if we do look really sort of not at the levels that we should be, it is going to have an effect on our performance. And if that is the case, then the international break couldn't come at a better time. Chance to refresh, go again, reset. Providing we don't have any injuries. Like the one Dara O'Shea suffered last time out for Ireland. It should be a welcome break, and I think we can look forward to that Blues game with a refreshed legs, but also a refreshed mind. And that should only benefit Ismaël and the team.
Absolutely. We'll take a little look at sort of the start of the season now then. Despite that defeat to Stoke, the second as things stand, 3 points back from Bournemouth with 6 wins, 4 draws, and a loss from 11 games. Are you happy? You satisfied with that, Matt?
Yeah, very much so. I think any supporter who isn't satisfied with second place and a 10-game unbeaten run at the start of the season maybe needs to check their expectations, or take a reality check perhaps, because this is the Championship, and how many times have we seen teams come down and then fall even further? I think from a Albion point of view, and our supporters only need to look back at when Wolves all those years ago went down and then went down again to League One. So we know how cruel and demanding the Championship can be as a relegated team. And again, even looking at this season, Sheffield United haven't enjoyed the best of starts, have they, under Jukanovic, who was considered such a strong appointment with his previous exploits in the league, and also Marco Silva at Fulham. Have spent big on the likes of Harry Wilson and kept Mitrovic, and it's a squad which you'd say should on paper be storming the league. So even looking at those two teams, I think to be unhappy with, as I said, second place as it stands and a 10-game unbeaten start would be wrong. I'm not saying that there are areas where we're perfect. We can improve, but I'm definitely happy and satisfied with the start we've made after 11 games 11 games in the Championship.
Absolutely. I mean, you touched on it there about expectations. You only have to look at the team you guys played on Friday in terms of Stoke to see a team that came down and really struggled to get over that relegation hangover for a few seasons. You know, after Valérien Ismaël was brought in, what were your sort of pre-season expectations for the Baggies?
Well, I think you look at the transfer spend to begin with, and you know the circus that surrounded Ismaël's appointment. You know, there's so much to take into consideration. Let's think. Well, we lost our best player in Matheus Pereira, didn't we? So that's a massive blow. And any club, I think, you know, especially in the Championship, top half of the Premier League would suffer from a you know, the loss of a player of Pereira's quality. So that you know, wasn't great in our preparations for the season. And then, of course, we had the circus surrounding managerial appointments. It looked like Chris Wilder would be the man to take over, and I think most Albion fans were happy with that. And then, of course, our owner, Gooch and Lai, vetoes a move for Wilder, which was, like I said, all hell broke loose. I think when that news came out, and it wasn't made any better by the fact that it was reported that David Wagner would then take the job. The Albion Twitter was going crazy, and I think almost rightly so, because you know what Wilder and how well he'd done previously, of course, at Sheffield United, was an encouraging appointment. Then you go into Wagner, who would struggle really at Schalke and whatnot. It was all a circus, and then you know a couple of days later, Wagner rejects the job, or you know turns down the opportunity. He's in Switzerland, and we're really back at square one. And you're thinking, what a mess! How have we gone from, you know, what looked like we were appointing Chris Wilder? You know, you could put it was a matter of when and not if, really. And then, of course, that goes pear-shaped. We lose out on another appointment. It's an absolute mess for a relegated team. We should have plans in place almost, you know, from the second that Sam Allardyce announces he's stepping down from the role. So it was a nightmare, really, and then we lost our technical and sporting director as well. But I think that was a bit of a blessing between you and me. But eventually, it settled down, and we made the appointment of Ismaël. And I think, you know, we were content, especially with as I said, the nightmare situation we'd experienced. Ismaël perhaps wasn't a name at the forefront of rumours. He was always one lingering perhaps in the background. I think you could say the same with the Crystal Palace job, maybe, and a few others perhaps. He was always a name there or thereabouts, but some might have considered that he wasn't ready to take that step up. But we definitely weren't unhappy, and I think the majority were looking forward to seeing what he could bring to the club once he was announced. Then expectations as a relegated club are always going to be high. I think, you know, no matter if you spent 100 million or next to nothing like we have, really, with the squad you've got. I think you always expect, I'd say top six was the minimum expectations I think Albion fans would have had prior to the season. So from that point of view, I think we've exceeded them.
Absolutely, and you know, you touched on it there, the circus managerial of that hunt, and the amount of times it seemed that an appointment was almost in your fingertips, and then it would sort of, you'd be right back at square one again. What has life been like, you know, in those first 2 months under Valérien Ismaël? You know, have you been impressed or underwhelmed? You know, what are your general thoughts, and how has he matched up to your expectations?
Well, I think the initial impressions of Ismaël are, you know, very much positive ones. I think, you know, he struck me as someone who, you know, cares about the culture of a club, takes, you know, the community, the historical links into consideration, and, you know, as a supporter, those are things that you sort of, you know, have added value. A man that respects everyone within the club, regardless of their role, and speaks really well. And, you know, that's just from sort of the, you know, off the field, and then you take into his aggressive style of football and intense pressing. I think it was something which supporters could really, you know, get behind, and the majority have done as of yet. So definitely positive impressions. I said, I'm someone who believes that not only should, you know, key figures at clubs be, you know, have the qualities to make them successful in their role on the pitch, but also should be good people first and foremost.
Yeah.
You know, the club Albion that I grew up supporting really had good people at the heart of it, and I feel like that's, you know, somewhat been ripped out in recent years. So to have someone like Ismaël at the forefront, I think, you know, was really encouraging.
Brilliant. Well, we're going to move on now to talk about a bit about some of this. a fairly busy window for Albion, some sort of high-profile exits, as you discussed, with the likes of Mateus Pereira, but also the signings of Alex Mowat, Adam Reach, Matt Clark, Jordan Hugill, and Jason Mulumbu, as well as Kieran Bryan arriving on a free transfer in September. Were you happy with that business at the time, Matt? And now looking back 2 months in, do you feel that was a good window for you guys?
Well, I think we'll start with the exit of Pereira, which, as I mentioned, is going to be a blow, no matter of the level you're playing at. As I said, I think he's a Premier League quality player, and nearly all English football supporters would acknowledge that. And he was great for us, and it was a shame to see him go. Probably more so in the manner which he left. Of course, joining Al Hilal in Saudi Arabia was disappointing. I think I would have liked to see him go and improve himself in the Premier League and better himself and play at the highest level possible. So that was disappointing. And then, there were rumours Albion were looking, holding out for 30 million, 25 million. And in the end, I don't think we really know what we made off Pereira. And I think rumours 17 million was a figure thrown, about 20 million perhaps. So I think, again, if you're looking from that perspective, it was disappointing that we perhaps didn't maximise his value. But if you didn't want to be at the club, then you can say, it's probably for the best that he left. So that was, of course, disappointing. Looking at the arrivals, I think we're better to start than Alex Mowat. What a signing he's been, honestly. Yeah. He's everything that we've needed in the middle of the park. He's got quality, energy, leadership, and you can't ignore the screamers he scores. It's absolutely brilliant. So I think, I might be exaggerating here, I might be a bit biased, but honestly, I think he's one of the best deals we've seen in the country so far on a free transfer, because he's been absolutely phenomenal in everything that we've needed as a club. I think, we relied on loan signings, the likes of Conor Gallagher and Okay Yokuslu in the Premier League last year. And of course, that's not a sustainable recruitment method, relying on other clubs' players on loan deals. But to have Mowat on a free, it's just outstanding, honestly. Brilliant business. Taking a look at a few of the other players, Adam Reach has been steady. I think perhaps someone who experienced a slow start, but then progressed as the more minutes he gained, the better he's become. Linked up well with Karlan Grant on the left-hand side, alternating between spaces, really opened up positions to one another. He's getting better. You've got Jordan Hugill, of course, leading the line the last couple of games. I was somewhat underwhelmed when we announced the signing of Hugill. I think we'll come on to shortly. With Daryl Dike, and he was the guy that Albion fans really wanted as a marquee signing. Hugill instead it was. He's shown glimpses. Hold-up play has been good here and there, but also enjoyed, didn't enjoy the game against Stoke. A poor performance, really. But you could say, the inconsistent Championship striker, that's what we've signed, so we shouldn't be too surprised. Again, quickly, Matt Clark on the left side of a back three, I was really impressed with prior to suffering an injury in the game against Blackburn Rovers at Ewood Park, and it was a shame, really, because I think he looked really steady in defence, solid, at the back, but also, steady on the ball. And you can see maybe why Brighton signed him, maybe the qualities which would suit Brighton's recruitment. So again, he's impressed. Shame he got injured. And of course, Jason Mulumbu as well, signed on loan from Brighton too. We haven't really seen much of him so far, but I think he's got a role to play. I'm not a massive Jake Livermore fan, so it'll be interesting to see more of Mulumbu when the time arrives.
Absolutely. Well, just a reminder to everyone watching, sort of ping in your questions, your comments and your thoughts. But we're going to move on to now a few of the top performers for Albion this season. You touched on Alex Mowat there. You mentioned Dara O'Shea's form previously, just before his injury. That there's the likes of Carl Bartlett, who's been nominated for the Football League World Fans Championship Player of the Month award, and how could we forget Darnell Furlong and those long throws, of course. But from your perspective, Matt, for the West Brom fans, who are the standout players been for you beyond the likes of Mowat that we just talked about, and are there any that have really surprised you with their form this term?
Well, of course, you mentioned Mowat and Darnell Furlong. Of course, on the notes I've made in preparation for this, I had to put those towel-enhanced long throws, which have caused what the word, anger and rage amongst Championship managers. But it's from an Albion perspective, it's always been enjoyable to see hoodies, blankets, who knows, any item to help us get a goal from one of those long throws. But Furlong up and down the right hand side has impressed. I think maybe we expected it from a player who looked steady in the Championship last time. Perhaps the Premier League was a step too far, it could be fair to say, but some would argue that he actually performed well in the top flight. But he's looked good up and down the right-hand side, steady at the back, despite that near miss of an own goal at Stoke on Friday night, but also has quality in attack too. So Furlong's one who's impressed. I think a name you didn't mention there, but will be at the forefront of Albion, the minds of Albion fans, will be Conor Townsend, someone who over the last 18 months, 2 seasons, you could say, really has made his mark and stamped his authority on the side. Of course, usually deployed as a left back / left wing back. He's such a force going forward and has a great delivery, links up play well, seems to have got better and better as time has got on. And for a player who we signed, for I guess what would be described as a pittance from Scunthorpe a couple of years ago now, he's really improved and even has filled in on the left side of a back three in Matt Clark's absence. And he looks solid in that role too. So Townsend for me is a player who I admire, have great respect for him. Obviously stepping up from League Two, League One, and now he looks like what I describe a Premier League player perhaps. But Conor Townsend for me has definitely made his mark this season.
Sure, and one player who I guess looks to me to be starting to find his feet at Albion after struggling, particularly in the Premier League, is Karlan Grant. He's scored goals in the Championship before. He's playing sort of, it seems, Ismaël seems to prefer to play him as one of those wide forwards. What have you made of Grant's performances this season, and do you think this could be a huge campaign for him?
Well, you're right. I've got down here. I'm not too sure. Well, initially, what's his best position? What's his favoured position? Of course, signing him, I suppose, as a striker in the Premier League, but I'm not sure that's where he exactly played throughout his time at Huddersfield Town. And last year he struggled, as the whole team did. He's no exception. I think the whole squad wasn't Premier League level, and you can say the same for Grant. And in all honesty, at the start of this season as well, I struggled really to see what makes him special, what makes him worth the £15 million that I think his transfer eventually adds up to. But you're right, he has improved in recent times, and he looks like he's finding his feet at the club for sure. He's getting better. Of course, he played a major part in our win against Queen's Park Rangers after being 1-0 down at half-time. Of course, Grant goes and scores both goals and took his second goal really well in that game, scored a brilliant goal at Cardiff in midweek as well. And you're right, he is finding his feet. He's getting better in all aspects of play. And it should be, well, I guess you'd expect him to push on from here, really. We signed him to play in the Premier League because he displayed his quality on the Championship stage. So it should be a big season for Grant. If you can keep this sort of upwards trajectory going, you could end up with a number of goals, but also impressing in his all-round play. And it looks like it will come from that sort of, I guess, wide forward role, inverted winger, inside forward, whatever you like to call him. And I think, it might have been a bit naive for Albion to have signed him, perhaps looking to play him as a striker in his favoured role off the left. I think it could be a big season for Grant, especially if he can continue this form going.
Absolutely, and obviously Grant, someone that Ismaël isn't looking to use as a number 9, but a player that he's hinted he might bring back into involvement really is Ken Sahor. Those comments, I guess, proved slightly controversial among Albion fans. What's your stance on Sahor, Matt? Is he someone that you think you'd like to see them try and shift out of the club in January, or do you think he deserves another chance?
Sahor is very much someone I'd like to see the club try and move on in January. I think, I'm not someone who goes on massive rants and gets too, agitated about certain things, but I think anyone who would listen to one of our podcasts after the Luton game where he came on for like a 5-minute cameo would have he's definitely aware of my feelings towards Sahor.
Yeah.
As you said, Ismaël did make comments in after, I guess you could say, an impressive pre-season. Shifted out on loan throughout our time in the Premier League last season. Like he didn't really have a future at the club, hasn't impressed previously, but made an impact, I suppose, in pre-season. It looked like he could have a role to play, but when he came on in that game against Luton, honestly, I think we were 3-1 up, perhaps 3-2 at the time. And, the lack of enthusiasm, the lack of energy, the lack of running, the lack of effort, the lack of desire, the lack of determination was just appalling. And it's not something you want to see from a player wearing, your club shirts. And that was the final straw for me. Of course, the addition of Hugill has knocked him further down the pecking order. And I'd imagine we'll look to move him on sooner rather than later. But that's if anyone wants to, wants to sign him, because I think Neil Warnock pulled off a good deal from his perspective whilst at Cardiff City, selling him to Albion for what I think it's rising to about £8 million. So a waste of money, unfortunately, and definitely someone I'd like to see depart the club eventually.
Absolutely. Well, I feel like you won't be alone in terms of an Albion fan hoping to see Zohore leave the club, and whether it's in January or not. And next, we're going to focus on the January transfer window. As it always does, the January transfer window seems to have, it's come around pretty quickly. It was still a few months away, but everything, the news cycle and everything's beginning to focus on that winter window. It's not far away now, Matt. What business do you feel Albion needs to get done?
Well, I mentioned those links to Daryl Dike in the summer, and we've signed Jordan Hugill, but for me, and probably the majority of Albion fans would agree, we're still missing something, that clinical edge, whilst also having the attributes that you need to play in a number 9 role under Ismail. And as we saw at Barnsley last season, Dike fits that profile superbly. He scored goals for fun, in the brief time he was playing in England last year. And I think whilst Hugill, as I mentioned, has shown bits of what we're looking for. It's maybe not the full package, but as I said, he's played for a few championship teams. He's probably at that average championship level. Whereas if we're looking to push on and looking for someone who perhaps could make an impact in the Premier League, Daryl Dike would be that man. The issue being, of course, with Albion, we spent zero in the summer. We didn't spend a penny, which is disappointing, but not exactly a surprise. Can we afford a deal to bring Dike to the club, and how do we structure it? There's talks of a loan to buy. If we achieve promotion, that deal will become permanent. A bit like what we saw at Barnsley last year. Of course, I think it was unlikely they were ever going to make their way to the Premier League, but there was an option to buy that deal. It's probably the way we could afford it. He's structuring out payments similarly to the deal we completed for Grant last season. But are we being a bit too optimistic? Is it beyond the realms of possibility? I'm not too sure. It's definitely the one I think we all want to see join the club, but whether a deal can be done is yet to be seen. But Dike is definitely the man at the forefront of everyone's wish list.
Absolutely. The young American seems to be the top priority for Albion fans, and we'll see whether that's sort of reflected by the club when the winter window opens. Well, that's a potential arrival, but in terms of potential departures, there's a lot of newspaper talk at the moment about Sam Johnson's situation. His contract still up in the air. There's been murmurings of a sort of a release clause at the end of the year in some sort of new deal, but at the moment he's yet to pen anything beyond the summer. Linked with Spurs most recently, Matt. Could you see Albion sort of cashing in there? How big of a blow would that be? And is it a case that you'd prefer them to look to hold on rather than lose him and see that derail the sort of promotion push?
Yeah, very much so. I think the boat that that ship sailed now. The chance of selling Johnston, whilst also maintaining a positive sort of position for the club. That's passed now, because the summer was the time to do that. I think they're looking for around 10 to 12 million pounds after dropping their valuation of him, with no bids really, to be seen. I think West Ham made an offer which the club, sort of just laughed off, I suppose. There has been talks of a new deal for Johnston. Of course, I'll be very much behind that, even with a release clause. If we didn't get promoted, I think that's only fair. perhaps trying to maintain a bit of value. And if we do go up, of course, I'd hope he'd be happy to stay at the club. Don't get me wrong, I think Sam Johnstone's a brilliant goalkeeper and someone who is capable of playing at that Premier League level. Spurs, if they are looking for whether that's a second choice goalkeeper or someone to fill the role that Hugo Lloris plays and might potentially vacate one day, Johnstone could do that. I think he's definitely good enough. But yeah, I'd rather see Albion now hold on to him, and if we are to lose him on a free, I guess that's football, I suppose. It's not worth rocking the boat of our promotion bid. I don't think. I guess you're putting all your money on him signing a new deal. If we can work something out, whether that means he'll leave next season, we can get some value. I'm not sure, but yeah, definitely would rather see Albion keep hold of Johnstone. He's more than good enough to play in the Premier League. It's just not worth risking our promotion bid for what would be probably less than £10 million, maybe even £5.
Absolutely, certainly a risky game to play. Selling a big key player like that. We saw Johnstone's quality against Stoke on Friday. Couldn't keep out that power one in the end, but the penalty save and everything else. And next, then we'll move on to sort of Birmingham in a few weeks' time and the rest of the season. As I said, it is a little while to go yet because of the international break. But are you backing Albion to sort of come back from that rest and get back to winning ways?
Yeah, as we mentioned earlier, really, I think the international break's a great opportunity just to reset and go again, and get that energy back in your legs. And the way Albion and Ismail want to play requires that energy. And if we can go from the first second against Birmingham, we should. Fingers crossed, of course, be able to get a win there. I mean, Blues enjoyed a steady start to the season, didn't they? Really, of course, beat Sheffield United on the opening day, but they've somewhat struggled since then. Of course, a heavy defeat to Nottingham Forest at the weekend, I think, showed that they might have had that positive start, but maybe experiencing a bit of a dip now. So I'd back us to get the win against our local, I don't want to say rivals, but neighbours, let's put it.
Yeah.
Lee Bowyer, of course, I don't think any of his sides are easy to play against. Of course, Troy Deeney was a great signing, I think, from a Birmingham point of view. It'll be difficult, but I'm backing Albion to get the win there for sure.
Brilliant. And then just looking on the season as a whole, I guess for you, is it a case of just keep plodding on, growing as Ismail's got sort of more time to get his ideology really bedded down and the players used to it, or are there particular areas you'd like to see improved by Albion before the season ends to sort of secure that top 2 place?
Yeah, there's been a bit of discontent amongst the Albion fan base in regards to our style of play, which more, in possession. Let's say, I think we have been a bit too direct at times, and we've got players of quality for this level, and ones who are capable of playing with the ball and keeping possession, and trying to move teams out of position. And as I said, sometimes we've been a bit too direct, maybe looking for that option in behind, or nothing. I'm not against a long ball over the top, or you play the way against certain teams, expose their weaknesses. But I think back to that game against QPR, we were 1-0 down at half time. The style of football wasn't great. We were poor, but the discontent turned into boos and jeers, and I think it was just disgraceful, really, because that win took us top of the league. And I'm one who thinks booing at half time especially gets you nowhere, because your role as a supporter is to get behind the team, encourage them, and I think so every supporter would admit we have a role to play and we can make the difference. So that was really, really frustrating, and I hated to hear that. And the team and Ismail didn't deserve those boos. But the point remains, I suppose, that we could improve the style here and there, keep the ball on the floor. We've got players to do so. So I'd like to see us perhaps play with possession more often. We showed against Cardiff. I think we're capable of it. So why not introduce that into our play a bit more? I guess sort of keep up, how I keep on going the run. We've started the form we've built up. We're in a good position. I think definitely the best position of any of the 3 relegated sides. We look set to make a return or we're in the best possible position to make a return. I think I'm getting a bit too carried away there for now. But yeah, I said we're well set. Carry on our start, and we should be pushing for those top 2 places come the end of the season.
Brilliant. Well, plenty of positivity then, Albion fans, particularly coming from Matt. Matt, it's been an absolute pleasure. Make sure you check out the WBA report for all your sort of baggies content. Thanks for talking to me today.
It's been a pleasure.